Hello, this is Cryptolyze. I hope you are well. This Thursday, 15 February 2024. We meet today to talk about ARB, the Arbitrum crypto. So as usual, we are going to divide this video into two parts. Fundamental part, we will come back to what Arbitrum is, the role of the ARB in Arbitrum. What is happening in terms of news, the defects, the bonuses compared to Arbitrum? How to build Arbitrum in an ecosystem where we will be in interoperability? What is the role of Arbitrum compared to Ethereum? Full of questions that we will answer through this video, and then we will project ourselves on the course for purchase and sale prices over the medium term, over the long term, and it already starts by explaining what Arbitrum is. Yes, a little digression first. I know I didn't deal with the cryptos that you asked for in yesterday's daily video. But that's normal. I'm just waiting for all the votes to be done and for me to recompile everything. And it will be from tomorrow that I will start to integrate them into the usual cycle, but I think it is important to talk about Arbitrum today. Because I haven't made a really dedicated video on Arbitrum until now, and when we really talk about layer narrative to Arbitrum, just as much as the others, have a really strong role, and I think it's important to speak. So already Arbitrum, what is it? It is a layer 2 of Ethereum. What does it mean? This means that it is a blockchain which aims to offer scalability to Ethereum, to use Ethereum as a security layer and alongside offering users of scalability. This is what we call a role P. That is, we will take all of the transactions that we will validate on our side and that we will subsequently integrate directly into the Ethereum blockchain. So the goal of Arbitrum is to really offer scalability, and it uses a technology called optimistic role P, which means that to work it considers that by default, all requests that arrive are requests which are positive, hence the notion of optimist, which means that there is no attempt at fault. And we have 7 days to be able to verify whether or not the transaction that is requested is fraudulent. So that means we have 7 days to finalize the transaction. So this is one of the flaws, but at the same time it still offers speed of first execution. Once again, the purpose being only the actual closing of the transaction. But we can have a pre-final in which we have a transaction that closes. That's why generally on Arbitrum or any other optimistic rollup, we will have transactions that are fast and fairly inexpensive. When I say fairly inexpensive, everything is relative. It's true that it still remains very expensive because it costs a lot to put and store the data directly on Ethereum, something which will disappear in particular with the next update of Ethereum coming, in which we are going to have an increase in the size of the blobs, which is the storage area really at the level of Ethereum, and when we are going to have a decrease in that, I think that we will really have transactions which will be less than a cent. And that is where we will really have the notion of scalability. So on the other hand, it is not something that is totally perfect, once again already in the concept itself. The optimism means that we have faults, and that we do not have the system which allows us to verify that yes or no there is proof, because the principle is that people who find a transaction which is defective are rewarded. And the problem is that we do not have this system which is deployed, but in this case the validators are whitelisted. And this is where the notion of decentralization is very relative. Without talking about the sequencer, I'm not going to go into details. If you're interested, let me know in the comments. I could make you a much more tech video on it. But the sequencer is what allows. It is the real engine of the role P, and it is what allows us to compose the notion of the role P and the sequencer at the moment they are hyper-centralized because there are not many basic ones already. So obviously that means that being that it is very expensive, that it is complicated to set up, there are quite few of them, and therefore necessarily all the blockchains which are in role P currently have very few sequencers or even just one. And so behind that makes decentralization very complex, but it's the beginning once again. So we have an optimistic rollup which works rather well. Okay, there are quite a few faults we understand. We know that there are the ZK rollups which are arriving which are more efficient and which are really zero knowledge proof in which we are going, have a mathematical proof where we are not obliged to wait for a finality of 7 seconds which will arrive. We talked in particular about Stark in the daily this morning. Who will have the token that comes out? Yes, but why is it interesting to use Arbitrum? Well, already because we already have a lot of TVL, we have 13 billion which are blocked, we still have some big projects which are on it, we have GMX, we have Aave, well it's classic, we have Pundle, we have Hyperliquid, we have Radiant with a lot of TVL, and above all we have a team which is very, very present. We see the core def who are there, we have the Comet who are very present, so it is very, very active. And I suspect all the optimistic roll P at some point will go into a form of ZK roll P or something a bit mixed which will arrive, so I consider that they made the move to leave before everyone else in using an already existing technology, which was the optimistic roll P, recover TVL and then switch. We know specialists in the field, Polygon and Matic, and it works quite well in their development, at least from the foundation and how the ecosystem develops. Therefore is developing, and therefore we could see the same thing at the level of ARBITRUM. And not only that, I'm going to make other videos for you, particularly on others which are being set up. But for me, we are still in this approach where we say that yes, there is a very strong interest at the level of ARBITRUM, and above all, which cannibalizes a lot of TVL in relation to its total ecosystem. In terms of the token itself, we are on a diluted market cap of 21 billion, already relatively substantial, with behind 2 billion tokens that have been released. We know that we are going to have unlocks that will arrive during 2024-2025, which is rather classic in terms of ARBITRUM and in terms of this type of launch that we could have. But hey, we are on a project which is overall solid. Before going any further, I would just like to clarify two small things. One, there is still ARBITRUM Stylus, which allows you to integrate the rest of C, C++ directly into the EVM. So it is something that very important, which will have to be monitored for the interoperability of ARBITRUM. And second important point is that they developed Orbit, which is actually the ecosystem in which you can create copies of ARBITRUM and actually create a little the OP stack, but ARBITRUM version, so which is rather positive, which allows you to build blockchains and use the ARBITRUM stack and to interface with ARBITRUM even if we don't talk about it very much. It's something that is quite important. In terms of the chart itself, we are not going to talk about the opening acceleration candle, which was quite powerful and quite strong, and classically on this type of opening, we always have a U shape in which we have an upward acceleration, we go back down with a breath, and then we really mark the cycle from the moment we have an interest in the project. From the moment we have an interest in the project, we will take a break of structure, something that, what we have done here, we can clearly see that we are making a very nice break of structure, and then we are consolidating on it to start again. And there, what we are waiting for is validation, with a break here of the 2-4 to say we're leaving again, on the rise. So, what is good, what is interesting, is that on this first bearish impulse and the retracement, we see that we went for the 0,618, therefore really classic, in which we made a very good accumulation before going back to retest the accumulation here, and having the bullish movement in which we really had December 2023, in which we had a bullish breakout. What can we really expect from ARBITRUM level buying zones? Already for me, I consider that we have had great opportunities before, but we are still in a retesting phase. See clearly that we have not broken the high of 2-4. We are certainly already in a market cap which is at 21 billion, but to give you a representation during the last bull run, we had Solana which was at 70 billion, but again without the expansion phase. Okay, so we can consider that we are going to have an expansion phase which will be X2, X3, X4 compared to the different market caps that we may have already had. So we could have a very good prospect of evolution. On the other hand, if we consider that we are in a phase of bullish acceleration, we could already go and look, presto. We simply need to take the Fibonacci, take the retracement, make this bearish movement on this bullish movement, and go find targets. Like, for example, the 2,618, the 3,618 with an ARB in the vicinity of the 7, that is certainly something which is very conservative. We could very well take the launch level of ARB there. We position ourselves directly at the launch price, and there we already see the 1,618, which is in the vicinity of 3.8. 2,618, which is in the 6, 3,618, which is around 8. And I think we could even see an ARB quite easily come close to the 10 and return to its ATH or even make a break of its ATH with a surge, because if we are really in a very bullish cycle with behind a valuation focused around layers 2, and it is the narrative which is pushed, as we knew the narrative during the last cycle of layers 1, well at that moment we will necessarily have a hypervaluation of all layers 2, and especially if we find ourselves on an ARBITRUM, which passes on a MixOpti and ZK. At that moment, we will have something which will be relatively strong. Once again, it is hyperpeculativity. We think something, it is not yet validated. We are thinking about the evolution that we could have. We are already on the market cap which is adopted, in which we have an ecosystem. We must no longer see it in this style and not go looking for big multiples on this type of assets. It is more a form of safety to follow the bull run. I hope you liked this video. If so, don't forget to leave me a like and a comment. It always makes me very happy. And we'll see you soon for a new video.